All right, perfect. So the first question we've got is, what do you think was good about this video? So just fire your ideas into the chat and we'll discuss them. Yeah, so a lot of people are highlighting that the candidate was giving evidence for everything he said, which is really important. Yep, answered quickly. Good eye contact, body language. So it's all about showing that you're confident and you know what you're talking about and you can prove that you've got those skills. Okay, and what do you think could be improved about video one? More enthusiastic, okay. It is important to be composed, but yeah, you do have to show that you're excited about medicine and passionate about studying it. Quite long sentences, okay. All right, and now we're just going to move on to rating the video. So let's start with attitude. So what did you think of the way he spoke and his body language? Could you rate that out of 5? Okay, so 4s and 5s across the board mainly. And the content. So what did you think of what he was actually saying? Was it good? A lot of 4s and 5s again. And overall, what would you give it? Yeah, high ratings. All right, so that's it for the first video, and now I'll pass on to Kirsty, who will talk you through the second one.
Okay, so we're going to send another YouTube link into the chat, and this is going to be the same station, same candidate, same question. And again, we'll just get you to watch the video, and then let us know once you've watched it, and we'll get some feedback from you guys. So if we could just send the link into the chat. Okay, I think we'll maybe start having a chat about it now. It looks like a few more people are done. So if we just kind of run through the same sort of questions there. So can anyone list things that they thought went well with that interview station? Okay, so a few people saying it kind of lacks enthusiasm, sounded a bit unrehearsed, cliched answers, and a few people kind of picking up on sort of his non-verbal skills. So, you know, his body language wasn't great. Yeah, someone's picked up. So I think try and avoid sort of talking about money and the pay of doctors in your interview station. It probably doesn't show that you're going into it with the right sort of motive. And then if we go into what did people think was good about that station? So most people are really finding any sort of good points with that station. So in terms of the things you guys are picking up, so when you're listing skills that you think you have, it's really important to try and demonstrate these skills and link them sort of both back to you, but also sort of to the career that you want to go into. So, you know, try and make the answers relatable as you can. And things like saying things like, you know, I've always dreamed of being a doctor is sort of a bit cliche and doesn't really have any substance to it. And again, sort of using words like passionate and things like that are a bit sort of cliched. And I think, yeah, when it comes to sort of the widest university question, it's really good to show that you've got an understanding of that university's course and sort of linking how that course sort of suits your personality type and things like that. So yeah, trying to make the answers more specific to you rather than sort of generic answers. How would you guys rate this video out of 5 for attitude? Sort of 2s and 3s. And then what about the content? And then an overall rating out of 5. Fair. So I think if we go to the next slide, I think you guys have sort of picked up what we kind of wanted you to pick up from this station. So our sort of first video was a sort of example of a better interview with it, and then the second video was an example of a not so good candidate. And then just to kind of summarize, so good things to do are to show an understanding of what a career in medicine involves, and then back up your attributes with evidence to show these skills. So you've all have written your personal statements and submitted them by now. So just sort of going through points from your personal statement to demonstrate how you've developed these skills that you're saying you have. And then really looking into the sort of medical skills curriculum and relating it to you is also useful. And then sort of bad things that we've pointed out, you know, don't just list your good attributes, make sure you back them up and try and avoid all your sort of cliched answers like, I've always dreamed of being a doctor, blah, 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 all, you know, try and avoid the cliches. Okay. So I think we'll move on to our next station, which is our ethics station with Freya and Emma.
Hi there, so my name's Freya. I'm a final year medical student and I'm here with Emma, who's also a medical student at Dundee, and we're going to be chatting through ethical stations. So Eve's lost the slide somehow, so I'll just start chatting through it while she's trying to get the issue sorted. So ethical stations in an MMI interview present you with a subject that has conflicting ethical issues. They're really common, so I think I had 2 or 3 MMI interviews and I probably had 2 or 3 ethical stations in each interview. And lots of people find them very challenging, me included, even as a final year. So ethical scenarios are designed to exercise your critical thinking skills to give the interviewer an idea of your personality traits through the answers that you give. Ultimately, these stations are designed to have no right answer, but they're wanting you to make reasoned arguments. So in these stations, they're also looking for you to have flexible thinking. So if they present some more information to you, you are able to change your mind and rethink your answer based on the information that they provide. When we're talking about how to answer ethical scenarios, we need to bear in mind the 4 pillars of medical ethics, which I'm sure you've all heard of. So just to give a brief overview, we have beneficence, which is doing what's right for the patient. Usually if the patient's ill, this means that we need to treat them. We have non-maleficence, that means not doing any harm to the patient or society, so not giving them the wrong medication or an unnecessary procedure. Patient autonomy means that the patient has a right to make their own decisions and we need to respect their wishes. And we also need to think about justice, which is ensuring that all the decisions that we make are fair on society and within the realms of the law. So for example, we need to minimise inequity between patients and weigh resources up fairly between different patients. So if we can just move on to the next slide, we're going to think about an example now. So Emma's going to run through this example, but just quickly, you're a doctor working in the emergency department and 2 patients are rushed into hospital who both require an emergency liver transplant, but you only have 1 liver that's available for transplant. So you're going to need to decide who deserves this liver the most. So handing over to Emma.
Oh yeah, okay, so we're going to give you a bit more information about each patient, sort of in different tiers. And if after each tier you just say who you think you'd give the liver to and give your reasons why, so we can have a bit of discussion. So we find out that patient 1 is a 28-year-old female who works as a paediatric nurse, and patient 2 is a 57-year-old female who's a retired university lecturer. So a lot of you are saying patient 1. Can anyone give any reasons why you've decided that? Because she's younger? So yeah, so a lot of people are saying because she's younger, she might have a better chance of success, and because she's, as some of you have put it, more valuable to the community. Okay, so we're definitely quite one-sided after the first bit of information. We'll introduce a bit more information about each patient. So we now find out that patient 1 is a single mother of 2, and patient 2 is a carer for her father with dementia. Does that change your decision at all? Are there anything new that would sort of persuade you otherwise? So still a lot going patient 1. Someone's pointed out that patient 1's looking after 2 people as opposed to patient 2 looking after 1 person. And patient 1 is acting as a role model for her children, so that might be an important role for her and for her children. I've noticed someone said that it is very tough, and these scenarios are very tough, and it's quite good to acknowledge that in your interview, because they're never easy decisions to make. Okay, that's some really good discussion. If we move on to the next tier. So we find out patient 1, her diet largely consists of processed food and takeaway. She drinks 25 units of alcohol per week and smokes 15 cigarettes per day, despite the GP warning her of the risk to her health. But she does exercise once a week with her walking group. Patient 2 consumes a varied and balanced diet. She's never smoked and only occasionally enjoys a social alcoholic drink. She's an active member of her local tennis club. So it's definitely adding more complication to the situation, and it's a lot more split now, I can see. Someone's mentioned how patient 2 has a higher chance of survival. I don't know if you want to expand on your thoughts behind that. So yeah, a few people have picked up on the fact that patient one's perhaps her lifestyle might put her liver at more risk, or her future liver. Okay, that's really good. And we'll just move on to the final tier now. So patient one is got a very close match to the donor, and she's been waiting on the list for 3 months, whereas patient two, the donor's not quite so good a match, but she's been waiting on the list for 4 years. So a few people have mentioned about less chance of rejection in patient one. So that might lead you to think that she has a higher chance of survival with the liver. But then also patient two, she's been waiting for longer, so that's a good point to consider. So I think that's really good that everyone's trying to weigh up all the different points, because it definitely is a complex case. So if we move on to the next slide, I'll give you some tips on how to sort of approach these scenarios. So it's good, a lot of you have showed that you understand that the ethical sort of tension that goes on in these scenarios, it's definitely not an easy decision to make, to decide between two lives, essentially. But bear in mind that these decisions are always made by a team of professionals who follow protocols. So it could be a good thing to sort of mention that, and if you're really stuck and not sure sort of where to go or where to start. It's good to weigh up both sides of the dilemma, clearly stating pros and cons to each side. It can be quite tempting to sort of jump to an answer straight away, but it's good to take time to see both sides of the argument, and often thinking aloud is good for the interviewer to see your thought process. Clarify any assumptions made. So when you're saying things like patient one, for example, has a better chance of survival, it's always good to give your reasoning behind it and how you got to that conclusion. Often the interviewer will sort of ask you supplementary questions to try and really understand your thought process. So it's good to be prepared to explain that. And then present the argument for one side, clearly stating your decision, and wrap up with a conclusion based on that decision. It might be that you can't make a decision, and it's all you can say that if that is the final decision you've come to. But just remember that it's not our jobs to be judgmental, and you always want to take into account the clinical situation and use it as fact to give your explanation, as opposed to judging the way someone lives their life. So for example, with patient one who drank heavily and smoked despite warnings from her GP, sort of acknowledging that, and that might have an effect on a liver transplant, but not judging her for the choices that she's taken, because we never really know fully the reasons behind it. So that's my tips for the ethics station.
Hi, I'm now going to be going through this third station along with Callum. And it'll kind of run similarly to the very first station that we did. So these kind of role play based stations can be quite common. They can be quite common stations in kind of MMI interviews, and they're kind of used because they test how an interviewee kind of deals with the scenario. So you're given a scenario and you kind of just have to deal with it, and it kind of shows how you can deal with situations potentially that make you feel a bit uncomfortable, or that kind of challenge you, and that kind of need you to solve a problem. So this is going to work kind of similarly to the first one, in that if you guys can go away and watch the video, and then we'll have some questions after. I think there might be a problem with Callum's sound.
No, we can't hear you. Caitlin, do you want to just...
Yeah, I'll just take it. So yeah, a few of you have put some really good points about the video. A lot of people I saw, I think in Capital, someone had written about about patient confidentiality being kind of being broken. So obviously, yeah, that's something really important. Well done for kind of picking up on that. That's something that you definitely kind of wouldn't want to do in that kind of situation. Patient confidentiality is really important. And I'm looking at a few other points that have been being made. A lot of people kind of saying that there was kind of a lack of care, and I think that's really important because that kind of comes through in body language and the way you're speaking. It can kind of show whether you care about what someone's saying to you or not. And so that's definitely something important to kind of consider if you're in a station like this, just how you're kind of coming across and how, even if it's an actor, how they would kind of feel if that was a real person and you're kind of in this real situation. And also kind of taking on their point of view is really important as well. And some people kind of picking up on comparing two people's issues, that's quite important as well, because obviously, even if someone is going through one thing, you can't really say to someone else, well, what you're going through is not as important. It's really important to kind of show compassion for kind of everyone. So you've picked up on some really good points. If you guys want to now go on to the questions about kind of rating the videos. So from 0 to 5, what do you guys kind of think of professionalism in that video?
Can I check my microphone's working just now? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you.
You can? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, so I can see lots of 1s and 2s, a few 3s, 1s and 2s mainly for professionalism. And yeah, I think as you kind of rightly picked up, breaking confidentiality really does show kind of a lack of professionalism. Yeah, and what do you think about problem solving in that video? Yeah, again, lots of 0s, 1s and 2s for that. I think kind of the candidate in that station kind of didn't go out of their way to kind of think of things that could be done, even though it was kind of a difficult situation. And so, yeah, I think a 0 to 2 is kind of fair for that. And kind of overall, what would you kind of rate that candidate? Yeah, so again, lots of 1s, 2s and 3s again for that video. So we've got another video coming up, which I think we will get the link for. Yeah, so this is video 2. So if you guys go away and watch this and then let us know when you've watched it, and we can have a chat about that again.
Okay, I've played that video on my computer and it's gone through, and it looks like lots of other people are finishing off just now. So if we could just move to the next slide and look at the questions there. Okay. So first of all, what was good about this video? Okay, so people are saying she's much more empathetic and she's more engaged. Someone's picked up on her body language, and I think that's a really good point. This was mentioned at the start of our presentation just now, but a lot of the interview is about what you say, but then a lot of it as well is about what you convey by your presence and what you do non-verbally. So it's maybe slightly different over a video call, but if you're sitting across from somebody and you have your legs crossed and your arms crossed, you're very turned off to them. And it doesn't seem like you're very receptive to their problems. And that was a bit of a difference between those two videos. The second one was a lot more receptive to the person's concerns. Someone said she stayed calm, and that's right. She showed more emotion. Someone said that she recognized how the patient feels, and that's very important as well. Of course, it's very important to be empathetic as a medical student, or as a doctor even. Someone said that she gave the patient options. Yeah, she gave alternatives to the patient. And that's a really good point as well, because it's important to remember that as anyone in the medical profession, you're treating a patient, but the patient's still a person. The patient isn't just a disease or a problem to be sorted out. And it's good to let the patient decide what they'd like to do and how they'd like to proceed. So when she said, you know, we can see the practice nurse, or we can reschedule this afternoon, that was really good. Is there anything that you think could have gone better about video 2? And no one's really said anything yet. Yeah, I would agree with what William said there. That was certainly compared to the first video. That was much better, and hard to find things to do better, and I suppose. So maybe we could move on to rating it just now. So could you rate video 2 on professionalism out of 5? Wow, that's a lot of 5s, Emanuela. Okay, so lots of 5s and 4s, and there's a 55 there, so that seems quite positive. Someone's given it a 6, so that's great. And what about problem solving? So how would you rate the problem solving in video 2? Okay, again, all pretty positive. And then overall, if you could just give it a rating. Okay, yeah. So I think especially when we compare two stations like that, you can really see the difference that having a good manner, being a bit empathetic, trying to be understanding, the sort of difference that can make. So now I think we'll just give a couple of general points about a role play type station. So someone asked in the chat, in the interview, will you be asked to do what we're asking you to do just now and watch other people in a scenario, or will you be asked to play the scenario? And we think that most of the time you'll have to play the scenario. So you will be in the position of in this case, the receptionist, but in other cases it might be different. So a point to stress is that you won't be expected to have any medical knowledge for the roleplay stations. So you just have to deal with issues between people. So it might be friends that have fallen out, or it might be someone that's looking for advice. You might be having to talk to a vulnerable person or a family member or something like that. And you just have to kind of mediate whatever issue they have. Someone's asked how roleplay stations would work this year, even though they're online. So we're not totally sure about that at the moment, because we don't think the medical schools are sure yet either. But you can still have a conversation very much over a call like this. And we do know already that lots of medical schools do remote interviews for candidates interviewing from overseas. So we reckon it would be over kind of a video call like this. So just to give some more general points, You don't always need to reach a conclusion in a station. So sometimes with some actors in the role play stations, you feel like you're going in circles. And sometimes it's best just to keep talking to them and to try and make progress towards a conclusion, even though you might not necessarily reach one. It's been stressed before, but it's really important to be reflective and to think about what you're saying and what you have said and what you could do better next time. So you'll be asked after your interview or after this station interview, how did it go and what could you improve on? So it's important to be ready for that and to be aware that you will be asked. And then if you don't know an answer to a question that one of the roleplay characters is asking, that's okay. And it's much more of a test of how you deal with that rather than trying to invent an answer for it. So in this case, we saw Freya saying, well, I'll go and I'll ask the nurse and I'll speak to them, or I'll maybe speak to the doctor. So she has said, you know, I'm going to ask a colleague for help, and that's very important as well, because you're showing teamworking skills, which are very important in medicine. And then finally, I would just stress that it's important to maintain the standards expected of doctors. So we saw in the first station, the first video there, which wasn't so good, we saw Freya broke confidentiality of a patient. So that's really bad. And we would say keep up confidentiality. We would say as well, the doctors obviously have to act within the law. So that could be things like always following the coronavirus guidance might be quite topical and relevant. And then we would say to keep up professionalism. And of course, don't be rude, don't raise your voice, and sometimes it's just a test of staying calm. So that kind of sums up the role play station just now. I don't know if you have anything else to say, Caitlin.
I've just been looking in the chat, and there are kind of a few questions about kind of knowing what solutions are available. And I think just to kind of stress the point that Callum was kind of making, it's just kind of about problem solving. So if you're kind of thinking, oh, I don't really know what you could do, just think of things that could potentially work. I guess you won't necessarily know, for example, that the nurse is free, but just kind of thinking of that as a possible solution. It's just kind of showing your problem solving skills that are kind of being tested in that station. So I hope that kind of answers those questions.
Okay, thanks so much for that, guys. I think we're running slightly over, so I think we'll have to just round up the session fairly quickly now, and we've just got one or two final slides just to quickly give you some ideas of some revision tools that are good for you. So first of all, as we've already mentioned, the General Medical Council website, have a look on there, especially for the ethical scenarios. NHS Careers website, that will give you an idea about the length of training, the types of different doctors that are available, and read the news, especially the medical aspects of the news, because it's very likely you might be asked about something there. And practice, practice, practice with your friends, with your family, whoever is around is the best way to prepare. So finally, so good luck. We hope you all do really well. If you fill out this feedback form for us, there's an aspect to put your email in, and we'll send you summary slides from this presentation. It's got all the summaries in it and the links to the videos and things if you want to go back and refer to them. I'm sorry we've not got much time for questions today, but if you do have any questions that haven't been answered, please get in touch with us. That's our email address, our Facebook and our Twitter, and we'll try and reply as quickly as possible. Okay, so thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you very much for delivering that. Some great feedback. I'm sorry. I was going to say there's some great feedback in the comment section. It's amazing to have such an interactive presentation, especially since everyone's sat in different sort of places around the country, and we've still managed to make it that interactive. So that was absolutely fantastic. Everyone's sort of learned as much about the process as I have. For people that are attending, we've now got about a 15-minute break. The next presentation should start at about 20 to 4, and that's going to be covering a Q&A again for aspiring medical students, and also from the perspective of parents and carers and teachers who are educating potential medical students. I'm sure that you guys are happy to, to answer any more questions in the chat section, and if people could fill out that survey form, that'd be absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much.